Okay, I've been wanting to make this one-part Eternal Struggle video about this card game, about some things I noticed in it in this game. This is a very strategic game where the deck building phase is very prominent in it, that it matters a lot what you put in your deck, and a lot of the choices you make before you start even to play this game will kind of limit your options what you can do while you play. And as the deck building in one part, the Eternal Struggle, it's emphasis on knows that you can put as many cards as you want, the same card in the deck, that you can even make a deck that has only one card and then you multiply it with 90 times, which is the maximum amount, and that enables you to do all kind of things. And there are different kind of things that when you start to research this game, you first of course read the rules and you notice these kind of things, and then you notice that there are these kind of mechanisms in the game that everything uses the same resources, and you have to kind of take a risk to do anything in the game. It's the same as your hit points kind of in the game, that the same resource that you use to any abilities or use to gain any minions in the table and so on. And if you use it too much, you can run low on it, and then something unexpected can happen, and then you are ousted in the game. As in, it's always better to have more hit points, but if you save them too much, then you can achieve little, and then some other players they get ahead of you, and then get kind of their thing going, and then oust you regardless, because your options or your assets are limited. Then there are these kind of thing that you first notice, and then you start to notice that there is these very strong cards, and there is this contest mechanism, as in there are very many unique cards that will be contested, and then you are driven in this kind of loop when you generate the deck, that there is this kind of a greed notion, that this game kind of gives you lots of options to be greedy, but then it also punish you if you choose too greedy option. For example, if you choose all the unique cards in the game, oh this is powerful, I put this in the deck, oh this is powerful, then you can end up in a situation where all the other players did the same, and then you end up contesting those unique cards, and they might not be that powerful anymore because you cannot use them. You have to contest them, and the contest mechanism also uses this resource that you use all the time, and then you have to sacrifice your hit points to contest, and when you sacrifice your hit points to contest, it don't mean you can use it, you just contest it, and then the other person who have the same unique card have to do the same, or then surrender it and sacrifice the card, and then you can have the unique card. As in, that's always very bad to have many unique cards that people will start to contest, and then there are this notion that some of these very prominent locations, for example, can be stolen. Like for example, the rack is probably one of the best cards in the game, and everyone wants it, and once you play it, you might not be the one that end up using it. As in, someone can just steal it. There are many cards that just say that direct action steal this card, and then you have to block it. If you cannot block it, there can, for example, be some stealthy deck that can steal those with stealth actions, and you don't have the intercept to block them even. And even if there can be deck that is very strong in combat, and then they just take those cards, and you have to face their minions if you want to block. So it might be a struggle. So some decks might go this kind of middle road, that they choose not to take these powerful unique cards or some cards, and go for this middle road and want to get some immediate advantage from it. And there is this, where I'm going to, is this master phase. Many of these unique cards, they are master cards, as in you have this master phase in this game that represents your own actions in the game field, and then this you can only play one master card, and if you play a trifle, you can play again a master card action. And there are this kind of cards, and every player, every deck, they always use this master action, they always use these master cards, and many decks are built around these master actions, as in if their master actions are taken away, that will cripple their deck, because there are many decks that emphasis on those master cards that will help them speed their growth in that game, and that can limit their growth very substantially if they are denied the option to use that master phase. And I am going towards these cards called WOS and this sudden reversal. This how I like to think this building these decks in there. I don't want to contest so many things, but there are some things that are very good and they are relatively rare. You also have to know your meta, that how you. It's very deep strategic thinking when you generate the deck in this game. You have to know the meta because there is also the anti-cards. There are cards like Arts on Investigation, there are cards like Fear of Meket, and this kind of master cards that are completely devastating if there are someone who play something that lets you target them. If you cannot, you just discard that card, but it's also one card in your deck. If you never use it, you rather have something useful. So it's also a risk and a choice to take this kind of anti-cards in your deck. But once you have them, some people might suffer very much for those cards that you play to them. And then there are, for example, this kind of card like what I like very much is the Fourth Cycle, because it's an event card. You can play an event, but it's limited to that you can only play it if there are 2 Gehenna cards in table. But it's very often that there are, because there are very good Gehenna cards that any decks have. For example, Dragon Bone or Dragon Blood or something is very, very common. And then there can be someone who play another Gehenna card. There are few very common Gehenna cards that are in many decks, even they are not impoed decks. And then once they're both are on the table, you just play the Fourth Cycle. The Fourth Cycle completely devastates a lot in the table. It puts all of those vampires are with 3 or 2 or 1 blood to torpor or something like that. And then it removes all Gehenna cards, and then it also removes all impoed conviction cards. It's a very strong one card effect. And these kind of effects, those you can include then in the deck, or then you can include something else. And there might not be the best way to approach this. The meta will change, and what kind of cards you need will change according to meta. And then there are these, but I myself like these middle routes that you research what kind of unique cards are common. For example, for some reason, Dreams of the Pinks is very common, and I would never put that in the deck even it seemed quite good card, because it's so common that you might end up contesting it, and there are so many of those situations, but it's this 3 turns use card, but it's a very can happen that it's in the game, and there are some other kinds, and you can use the master phase also to get some immediate gains. For example, there are many master cards that are played as an instantly, and you immediately gain that gain. There are no unique mechanisms in them, they are not in the table, you just play them, sacrifice them and gain some benefit. And if you use your master phase action to that kind of end, that you gain some kind of some seemingly minor advantage for that card, but you still can play it and you immediately gain some kind of advantage. It don't seem very strong when you first think about it, but then when you start to think about that you are constantly gaining these advantages, and these other decks possibly are not. They might end up contesting, their locations might be stolen, and there are many things that destroy locations and these kind of things. And then there are also this kind of notion that when I build deck, there are this boss and sudden reversal cards. They go to every deck. There are no deck that you cannot put them into, and they always tamper when they always hinder some other person's master phase action. That they always will use it, and some decks emphasis very strongly on the master phase or entirely build around the master phase. If they cannot use some crucial master phase cards, then their deck is basically crippled. And you can do it very easily with these cards, and it's a choice. It gives you more growth potential or momentum to your own deck, but it will hinder your opposing sides. And you can even do some kind of very, very even kind of this kind of a far end decks with this kind of approach that you can use all of your master phase action and rifles to just shut down some other decks master phase, for example your prey, and then you can just because you build your deck like this, you know it beforehand, but your opponent doesn't. When your opponent emphasizes on the master phase and you shut it down, and you don't because you build your deck in the mindset that you don't use the master phase, then it's the advantage, in my opinion, is on you, because you both sacrifice the master phase, but the other deck don't play around that notion. But there are also other players that you have your own Predator, and then that makes you kind of a weaker in a sense. But you can also start to shut down your Predator's master phase. And having this card, this option to counter basically their master phase actions, it can give you other kind of options too. That if you have this kind of, there are this kind of very good cards like Giant's Brood that you can use once in the game, and the person who uses it can use it, and then no other player can. So if you include this Giant's Brood in your deck, it can become a discarded card because some other player had it first. So you can also affect this with this wash and sudden reversal. Some other player play Giant's Brood, you say no, you wash it out and then you play it yourself and you draw it from your deck. And in that way you can also more easily benefit from this kind of play once type of cards when you have this wash in your deck. But that's kind of an all-in approach that I described, but there is this middle ground, for example, that you do use your own master phase to only master phase actions, that you put no sudden reversal in the deck, but this wash with trifle, there are some good trifles in the game. For example, Spider Weave is very good if you include multiple vampires in the group. And then there is this Villain is very prominent card in this trifle, but there really is not that many good trifle cards. And then you can as well put something like 6 or 7 wash. That each time I do a deck in Vampire Eternal Struggle, even I don't play that game, but I really like to just ponder that mechanism in that game and try to construct these decks. And it would be interesting, of course, to see how those decks fare, but they are not these winning decks. When you go through these tournament winning decks, they don't use this card. They are all only if there are some kind of decks that need to counter some master card. For example, if you have this target for Fear of Meket, you have this kind of Justicar or some kind of inner circle vampire, and then other person might have this Fear of Meket, it will become devastating for you. And then if you have few sudden reversals or wash in your deck, I have seen these decks in these who have these, that they only have 1 or 2 of them. And I suppose they are for that reason, that once they play that Fear of Meket, if they do, they can wash or sudden reversal it, and then they are saved for the effect. And they usually don't, or the Archon investigation also, you can wash it out. And then also the wash, the mechanism say that the person who you play it against can get new master phase action, but it doesn't matter because you get rid of that one card that you really want to get rid of. If there are no Fear of Meket, if there is no Archon investigation or anything, you can always play it to something else. So it's a multi-use card that you never end up discarding. You will never discard a sudden reversal or wash. You will always have a target for it. There are absolutely no reason why you cannot target some other person's master phase action, and it will always kind of be a burden for them. It's never good in that game, I suppose, that some other person say that no, I deny your master phase. And then you're just, damn, I really would have wanted to play this card, and then you just cannot. So you can decide where to play it. So some player, for example, play the rack, you just don't pass it out. You just, okay, just play the rack. I will steal it from you. And then some other player play something else. Play, for example, Tomb of Ramses. And then you are, no, you are not playing that. And wash it out. And then that person will get 1 turn later that big vampire that they wanted to rush in the table, and so on. You can that 1 turn that they are 1 turn without any minions can be very kind of a deciding factor in their growth, and they can some other their predator or prey can kind of emphasis on that. And if that person happens to be your own predator, it's very good that they don't get that big vampire in turn 2, for example, and they only get it in turn 3, their first minion. You already have your minions going there, possibly even 2 of them. And then this kind of things that you can do so much with this kind of cards, and then you don't go overboard in anything. You don't go overboard in these greedy, unique locations. You only take some of them if you need them, and you research that what kind of locations or unique cards are common and what kind of cards are not contested so much. For example, there are some very good weapons in this game if you use them that are very rare. There are, for example, I think it's Ardon Baton or something. It is very good because it's, or was it Jomnus Axe or something? Because it doesn't allow your opponent to play grapple cards, and then it's just the same than the normal weapon. But it has this unique effect that your opponent cannot play grapple cards, and these grapple cards are very good cards in this game because if you have the effect that they cannot use grapple card, it's a very, very strong effect if you don't use it yourself, because grapple card, immortal grapple, means that you cannot use weapons, you cannot use any strike cards, you can only use hand strikes. And that is a very devastating effect to many ends, and that it's a very prominent card, and probably all of some kind of close combat decks, that especially Brutesach, they will have this immortal grapple, and they will emphasis on that card. And if you can deny it with this one weapon, it will kind of be very good to have. And it's not that common that you end up contesting it. For example, if you put Ivory Bow in your deck, it's entirely possible that you end up contesting, because Ivory Bow is so good and so common that everyone wants it, and then they put it to the deck. There are many decks that have only one Ivory Bow and no other equipment, for example. They just add the Ivory Bow in it because it's so good. If they happens to gain usefulness in it and so they do not end up contesting it, it's a very big advantage for a person who can use that. So some players add it, and there are lots of those decks that have it. And that's what you have to think when you build the deck, and you kind of start to think that what cards I possibly end up contesting, and this boss mechanism helps you in this, because there are some unique master-based cards that you can wash also out. That if you, for example, play Sabbath and you really want to have that Coyote or the Coyote bar or something, and then some other player, or if you are Anars, you want to have this Anars Reroll or Free Press, and some other are two Anars, and they have this, you can wash it out when they play it, and then you can play it yourself. You don't end up contesting it. There are this kind of things, and when you don't have too many of them, if you have only 6, 7 or 8 of them, these wash cards, it flow through your deck. They are not too common that you draw multiple of them at the same time. You from time to time you draw one of them, and then you use it at the same turn, and it flows through your deck, this wash. It takes space from your deck, but if you have 90 cards in deck, if that's your choice, and 6 or 7 of those cards are washed, you can include them in all decks. And I would, even for the fun aspect of it, that it's fun to play, that you from time to time draw something like boss, and it's fun to choose what do I use this for. Do I block this or do I block this? And you can always have usefulness in it. You never discard it, and once you have only few of them, it adds spice to your deck, kind of. And then you draw it, you are always happy to draw boss, you wash it out, you can still use your master phase, it's a trifle, and then so you can wash something out, and then you flow it to your deck, you draw a new card immediately. So it's just flows through your deck, this boss, and you wash something out from other people. I see this as very good and prominent effect. And then in the end of this video, how to say to what kind of decks I do like when I have researched this game. I do like very much this kind of very direct approach, and I really don't like these decks that emphasis on something that they don't have combat proofness. And many decks will have many weaknesses in this game, because there are so many anti-cards or some kind of cards, and there are even some political actions can be very strong, and there can be some political decks, but that's also not given. There can be things that hinder them, and if there are two political decks, they start to contest kind of the political atmosphere, and they can vote against each other, but they possibly don't have reason to. But there are some cards that, for example, destroy all minions at once. If you use a political action that all minions are destroyed if you don't pay the cost of them again, it's devastating to some deck that use only minions and this kind of thing. And there are many this kind of things that can happen when you emphasize too much. You go all out in some kind of option and try to accumulate that you try to win with having something, going all out in some approach, and then someone have something against that approach. And there are, for example, one approach that is very common is that you have lots of this kind of power 1 or 2 vampires, and then there are these kind of cards like was it Scourge of the Enochians or something like that, and then there are this Fourth Cycle or something, and they immediately destroy this kind of approach. The Fourth Cycle put all in the Torpor, these 3-2-1 vampires, this power, and someone have 50 of them on the table. You play Fourth Cycle, and then there's just, oh no, suddenly all of them are in Torpor and they have no minions. There can happen this kind of sudden things, and you cannot even wash or sudden reversal this the Fourth Cycle. It's an event, you cannot counter it. And this kind, and then when you don't go all out too much for something, and then to going all out or something means, in my opinion, also in this game that you possibly don't have combat road. There are some all out, for example, political decks that only emphasize, for example, very probably meta deck is a Gangrel Politic Anarch deck. That there are these cheap Gangrel Anarch, and then you emphasize on the political possibility of their Anarch Gangrel, and then when you are blocked or someone is going to combat you, you just play this Protean card, this Earth Meld that lets you unlock and end the combat. It's a super strong card if you can play it unhindered, that you can just end combat. No, you cannot block. I draw a new card because this flows through my deck, and then I just unlock my vampire after the combat ends. Your vampire ends up blocking, you cannot block it again, and then I just do a new action. That's a super strong effect, and that effect can be ignored with this Immortal Grapple. So all of these cards that ignore this end combat thing, there are few of them. There are, for example, one this some master cards, or was it one this event that says that the first combat in a turn cannot be used end combat. And then there are some kind of quad dog or quad pack or dog pack or something, or alpha dog or something named card that says that the opponent cannot play end combat cards. And then there are some few of these effects also, that this Immortal Grapple happen to be one effect that say that you cannot play strike cards, and it is strike end combat. This is this card that ends combat always, and many decks, they emphasize, it's pretty common, I suppose, in current meta that they play these end combat cards, and if you can make them not to play it, for example, to do a Gangrel deck, for example, no kind of Brujah deck, to be very direct approach, you use Esprit de Corps, you, for example, use this Esprit de Corps, you don't emphasize too much on it, it's just a spice in your deck, you add, for example, 3 of them or 4, and then you add something like 2 or 3 supernatural strength if you want to make some really powerful. Then you use these, you want to have master potency, master presence, and master this celerity. You want to have this kind of vampires, and then you can go this road that you go just to Show of Force, and this Show of Force gives you +2 bleed and +2 strength. That's a super strong effect, and you just go Show of Force, you put something like 40 or 50 of them in deck, or 12 or something, and you just constantly use this super bleed to bleed them out and gain strength. And if you end up in combat with them, you have in your hand, you have Immortal Grapple that they cannot end combat and that they cannot use strike cards, and then you use these celerity cards. I suppose they are not strike cards, you can use them. And then there are this very good celerity card called Pursuit. It don't cost anything, it gives you maneuver that you can go to close range if the opposite do other maneuver, and then to have 2 maneuvers is very good, because 2 maneuvers they have to use 3 maneuvers to get in the long range. If you have 2 maneuvers yourself, that's very, very super rare that some person can use 3 maneuvers in a combat. And then there are this, in my opinion, very underused item in this kind of decks is this light intensifying goggles. It's a free item, you just equip it, and then you can have it, and it gives you 1 extra maneuver each combat, and then if you play target card, you can attach it to that goggles, and then you can play the game. It makes it very viable to add 1 or 2 target cards. You don't need to go overboard, you can only add 1 or 2. for example, you can add 1 or 2 target hand, because in that way you can destroy weapons and you can get the -1 strength. That even that -1 strength that you can play twice for free with these goggles is very good. If you add 3 or 4 of these goggles, you from time to time draw it, and then you just attach to one vampire, and then that vampire have always extra maneuver, and then when you have 2 or 3 target cards, when you happen to draw that target card, you can just play it to that who have that goggles and then play it again. And target vitals is also pretty good if you think about it. You can choose a strike that is +2 to damage. And then there are good cards in this kind of deck. Is, for example, Taste of Vita is good, that you can feel your blood to that vampire again, because that's the resource you use and you want to feel it. And then there is this if you have some really strong vampire facing you, you can play Immortal Grapple, and then you can play this Blur. And Blur gives you so many extra attacks that you just pummel them, because you have high strength. You have +2 strength from Show of Force, and then you, if for example, if you have +2 strength for Supernatural Strength, your strength is something like 5. And if you strike 3 times with this kind of strength, it becomes really brutal, and if the opponent cannot use weapons and cannot use strike cards, it becomes really, really brutal, and they just pummel them, and then after they have pummeled them, you just add Taste of Vita. If they have accumulated any damage from the opponent, you just Taste of Vita it out. And you can, the Taste of Vita also feels you when you, for example, sacrifice 1 blood for that blood, that you can play it. You can get even that back with that Taste of Vita, because you do so much damage. And there are this kind of thing, and even this Pursue is very good, that if you have this intensifying goggles, you have maneuver, the opponent play, no, I maneuver at the long range, no, I have these goggles, I maneuver, and then, okay, I maneuver again, the opponent, and now I get away with it. You don't catch me, no, I put Pursue, and then you catch it. But if you don't have to play that Pursuit to catch the opponent, you can always play it to gain that 1 extra strike. It's a very cool card that you can have extra strike for free, and to have multiple use to pursue the opponent, because that take emphasis on close range. You cannot let the opponent. There are some kind of cards that says that you can set the range. You cannot do anything about it, but they are very, very rare. And that's the beauty of this game, that there are always something that counters something. You cannot have a survey to kind of take all into account. You have to, when you build the deck, you have to think about these things, that what is my approach and what kind of, how I plan to win, what I plan to do. And there are different kind of sex gives you different kind of options to do. And this kind of, I really much like this Brutsa, because the disciplines they have are all very good. This presence plus potence gives you options for the Show of Force, which is, they can redirect it, for example, of course they can. But there are also this kind of, for, if I remember right, there can even be some kind of event card or Gehenna card, that these redirection cards cost 1 more. And you can even add it yourself, even you have this 4th cycle, you can add 1. For example, in this kind of Pummel deck, the Dragonbone card Gehenna is not a bad option. And it's not bad option to have this kind of card to for example, that if they redirect the bleed, it costs 1 more. These kind of things that you can play. And if you need the 4th cycle, these Gehenna cards can be played by you. It doesn't say that they have to be played by your opponents. These Gehenna cards that need to be 2 on the table, they can be controlled by you also. And it enables you to play this 4th cycle if you need to. And even this kind of this effect that it removes all of these, or puts to torpor, these 1, 2, 3 vampires, it's so strong that once you hit it some deck that emphasis solely on them, it cripples them entirely, and they are out of the game basically, only because this 1 card, this 4th cycle. There are this kind of dangers that when you go all out in something, and there are also this kind of some minor cards also that target this kind of, that there are these cards that target these Justicars and Inner Circle. They are very risky for that reason, because they risk this Fear of Meket, and it's a very common card to add it, because it's so good the effect that you just add it and then you just discard it if you don't use it. Some people have it. And then there are this that have more targets, this Inner Peace Golconda. This card will damage someone who have something 8, 9, 10 11, 12 vampire in the table. And this is a very common situation, and this kind of thing, and you can also wash that out. If someone play this call conduct to you, you can wash it out if you have wash in your hand. It's this kind of mindset that I have been building, and this Brutsa don't end up contesting many things, but this Brutsa can also be played, for example, in that way that you have lots of locations and you have these kind of things that if people try to steal them from you, you have something that gain you intercept. For example, to add one sports spike in the deck can be good, and to for example have some location that gives you intercept, and if you are Sabat Brutsa, you can add this Temple Haven or something, and this kind, and these locations that if you choose to use, for example, you can have some Brutsa deck that have something 7 power based. Some of these power based are pretty good, but they are still not so common. Of course, the Montreal is very common, and this you might not add it because it's so common. You just let some other person play it, and then you aim to steal it. Or then you can use your master phase to have some kind of immediate gains in the master phase action, and you can even go with all out and put many sudden reversals in there that you don't use the master phase, and you just use few of them. For example, you use gang territory, for example, to gain this influence to those Brutsa until the war. If you are normal Brutsa, you can use something else. And this kind of that you use 1, 2, or 3, and then you add that Giant's Blood there. And because you have this boss and sudden reverse. If you have, for example, master cards in the deck that use 1 Giant's Blood, then use 1, 2, or 3 this kind of that build your deck around cards, and then some few other cards. You have something like 5 or 6 master phase cards, and then all the other master pair cards that you can have more than 20 you feel with sudden reversal or was. So you aim to destroy some other person's master phase action, and then you aim to power bleed them with the show of force. And in that way you oust your predator, for example. This can be used, tactical strategy can be this straightforward. If they redirect your bleeds to someone else, you will just pummel them and hurt them. And in this way, you are this kind of a person that you just go out there and pummel things. That's very like some approach that is what makes it interesting is this, that you have this counter mechanism in it, that you can counter something. But there are more interesting ways to play that game, and some more clever ways, but that's, for example, one when I researched those cards, this Black Hand Asamite is also very something I like, because you can have this kind of dominion or some kind of cards that let you unlock lots of these Black Hand vampires, and you have lots of unlock mechanisms in this deck, that and lots of some kind of strong mechanism in this kind of a Black Hand Asamite deck, and there are these mechanisms also that I like. This burn blood mechanism. It is not steel blood, it is burn blood. It happens before any combat, so it always takes effect. And all these kind of effects that take always effect, that you cannot counter them, they are always cool, because there are this kind of cards, they have this one card that gives you +1 strength for free, and then the opposing side have to burn 1 extra blood for each strike card that they play, or each strike that they use, I suppose. That every time they strike, they have to burn 1 blood, and that will happen always. Even they will play that strike in combat, they have to burn 1 blood for it, if you play this card. And they have this kind of mechanism, and if you go more overboard, they have also this, I think this Black Hand had already this kind of mechanism that if you block a Black Hand vampire, you have to burn 1 blood. And then you play this +1 strength to yourself, and then they burn another blood. And then there are this another card that says that they burn 2 blood before the combat. They have burned 4 blood already before the combat even start. And then they, or I suppose 3, and if they want to strike, they have to always burn 1 extra blood. There are this kind of mechanism, this Asamite. Yeah, when you look these winning decks with Asamite, they always go this Thaumaturgy blue road. But this can always be strong, this kind of this traditional road that you go in this way. And if you end up in the combat and the opposing side end up burning blood, and for example, if you have celerity opponent that use lots of strikes, they always when they strike, they have to burn 3 blood. And if they want to use blood, they have to burn 4 blood, I suppose, because they use 1 for the blood itself, and then they strike 3 times, then you have to burn 4 blood only to use this plural. And then you have your own this kind of things that you can do in that combat and fare well in there. You might have your own tricks in there also. And one of those tricks is that you also probably have celerity. And you can also play this kind of things like plural. And then you just both pummel each other with plural, and then they have to burn the blood. And it can be if they don't have many blood and they have to burn them, then they cannot strike. Because that means that if you burn this 2 blood also, it means that if they want to strike 3 times with blur, they have to burn 6 blood only to achieve this effect. And not all minions have this amount of blood available. And this makes it annoying for the opposing side, that they always do this, even it doesn't matter what you do. You always lose something and you go against them, because they always burn you blood. And that's this kind of approach that I also like. And there are in this kind of deck they have also these contracts that they fill your blood in the vampire. You can pull from achieving contracts, and you can, if you manage to oust the opposing side, you get more blood. There are even one card that if you manage to oust the opposing in this tour, you get double amount, you get 12 pull from it, I suppose. And there are different kind of mechanisms that they emphasize this master phase action to not unique cards, but this kind of contract cards and probably this kind of archetypes. You can add 4 of these archetypes to black hand decks that let you unlock. You just have 4 or 5 them in the master phase and use your master phase to this kind of not unique locations, but this kind of immediate gains that give you contracts and give you archetypes to those vampires that you use, and this kind that gives you advantage, but the opposing side cannot contest them. And this makes it kind of strong in that way. There are also this kind of very strong in this Assamite bloodline, this their discipline, this kind of cards that are very strong one-time effect. For example, there is one card that only says it doesn't, I suppose, it didn't cost anything even. It's just an action that says that destroy all these hunting grounds. You don't have to play hunting ground yourself. You can just not play it and not put that in your deck, and then other people who play hunting grounds, they are suddenly all destroyed with one action. They of course want to block it, but if they block it, they have to face this thing that you burn their blood and are also good in the combat. And then there is this. They have also this some kind of card that deals 1 damage to all in the one bloodline. You can choose a bloodline, and all in this bloodline that are ready hit 1. They have to burn 1 blood. With this also you can burn them. You can burn their blood with this action, even before combat. And then when the combat happens, they have already burned some blood from this action. And then they have to burn more blood. And this is that you burn their resource basically. And then you burn their hunting grounds. And then you have also these options to add in this discipline to burn their locations. And you can multi-use this burn location to gain more bleed for your, because bleed is probably one of the weak points in this deck, because you go there hunting the vampires and you gain pool and prestige for taking them out basically. And that kind of approach can be also fun to play. And then there are also Ravnos is very fun in theory. This Ravnos discipline or this bloodline is very funny because they have this kind of, they also have this edge illusion, this that they spam 1 damage, and they have this kind of cards that the opposing side cannot unlock, and that is very annoying that if you cannot unlock your minions, and that if you have strong minions that you have slots on, and then shouldn't you cannot unlock that minion, it can cripple them in a way, and even to get 1 very strong minion stuck like that is very strong. And it's very fun also for you and not fun for the opposing side. And this kind of approaches can be there, and this kind of decks can be fun, and there are many different kinds of decks. That's also why this game is so good, and because it's very well thought out, that it's quite balanced, I do think, and you can have so many different approaches that there are no right way to do things, and these people who have played this game for a lot and are some kind of veterans there, it's very possible that they still haven't mapped this game out. And there are new cards that come to this game also, and you have to also think about that. then there is this meta that changes. You have to think about the meta when you construct the deck, and once you lock the deck that you choose them, you can change it. You have to go with it, those choices, and you have to, before you go to some kind of tournament, you have to go through this kind of process that I'm speaking about in this video, that you think, what do I take a deck? What kind of deck do I construct? And it can even be that basic, the thing that you want to avoid, that if there are some kind of very prominent deck type in the meta, for example this Anar's Gangrel, you don't want to use it, because if everyone take Anar's Gangrel deck, that it's very common that one person in the game have it. If you happen to have the same deck than them, you will end up contesting the vampires. You will contest your minions and your both are pretty much crippled for it. It's a very bad luck if you end up having same group cards than any other person in the play. And that's also the one thing that you have to take into account, that what is the most common group cards that they do use, and do I want to take them, because if I do end up contesting them, it's very bad. That's one thing I don't like that much in this game, because it's really frustrating if you do have to think that you end up contesting your minions, your group cards, that you use, and it's completely, in how I see things, it slows your deck so much down that you end up always contesting your minions. That's very bad news for something, and that's also something that you have to think. But it's part of the game, and you have to be lucky, I guess, to not have any other person to use similar deck than you. And that's also something that you can think about, that what kind of deck you want to use, that you really don't want that deck that everyone else uses, and you really don't want to have all those unique cards that everyone uses. You do want to have some usefulness, but you want to have it in a way that you can achieve and build on it. And for that reason, in my opinion, these boss and Sudenreversa cards can be very viable in some kind of decks. For example, in this Asamite deck, it's not as strong, because in Asamite deck, you have to build around it. You have to use those contracts, you have to use your master phase, and you kind of take very aggressive stance and go towards the opponent, and you can have some boss in that deck also. That you can add 5 or 6 or 7 boss, of course, in that Asamite deck, this black hand, but you cannot go for Sudenreversa for that kind of deck, because you would have to sacrifice your own master phase, and you don't want to do it. You want to use it for all this kind of utility that they have. There are also different kind of things that I probably cannot think about, because I am very novice in this game, but I am very kind of a veteran in this kind of mindset, that to build a deck or do choices before the game is kind of that you have to build some kind of a approach that you take into some kind of competitive environment, and then you have to fair with it, and you cannot basically change it anymore. And this kind of thinking is what I like, that you have to beforehand kind of understand what is going to happen, or what is going to be there, or at least have some kind of guess or intuition for it, and then you can do research also what kind of decks other people, and there are so many different kind of decks when you go. You can have them, these tournament winning decks, you can have lots of them at the same time to be looked upon, and when you go through them, you notice that there are so many different approaches, and even those people who use similar kind of group cards, they go for different kind of approach, and even their strategy would be the same. For example, political Gangrel decks, there are different kind of variations for it. There are not just one deck that everyone uses, and it's not the same than in, for example, in Magic the Gathering, you end up having this kind of deck builds that they just copy from internet, and then you just add the same cards, and that's it. In Vampire the Eternal Struggle, that's probably more uncommon, because you happen to start to think that I want to do something different. I want to make this deck for myself, and I change this and this is my approach. It's the same basic idea, but I use a bit different style kind of in it, because you have so much options, and you are not limited to only 4 of one card. You can put any amount of if you want. It's only a choice in this game, and that makes it in a way that even you have less cards in option than in Magic, you can kind of have more options when you construct the deck. The deck kind of this balance in it can vary so much. There are so many things, but there are many approaches that are probably these veteran players know very well. That once they see a card, that even a game, they don't know what the opposing side have. Even for 1 or 2 cards, or even for 1 minion that goes to the table, they can immediately understand. Okay, you have this approach, and they have this kind of a some understanding that what is going to happen with that deck, and not, they don't know exactly know, but they know it well enough to know what to expect and what kind of mechanism is there to use. And in this, if you are a novice, you don't have this kind of experience, and there will be some very many surprises for you. And it's also a fun part of this game. And even for these veteran players, if there are new approaches for if some novice player who is not accustomed to this game, they can invent anything. There are so many approaches that when I go through these decks that people have built, these tournament win decks, I never would have thought them myself. Never I would have thought that you can do this, because it gives so many options that once you see that this person won this tournament, this kind of deck, this is actually very clever, and then you start to see, yeah, this is actually very good, and then only you see it. That when some other people do it, and if that person would, if you would not have seen that deck, you would never have invented that yourself, never, I suppose. And then no matter how hard you try, because you think differently, you see the card differently, the different cards, you notice different cards. For example, I noticed Voss and Sudden River immediately when I read these cards, I said, yeah, this is what I like, this is good. And immediately I saw that you can counter a Masterface. Of course I want to do it. And then when I read these tournament winning decks, I start to ponder, why no one do it? It's probably also this kind of atmosphere that you have in this game, that it emphasizes on greed, that you want to build your own power base very aggressively. And even these middle ground decks that don't do it, they rather want to have more cards in deck that build upon their own power, rather than they would limit the other. And if they have any options in the deck that limit other person, there are these kind of a strong anti-counter cards that they add only 1 card in the entire deck to do this kind of thing. And that 1 card can very well be this Archon Investigation or Fear on deck. And they only add 1 in the entire deck. And all the other cards in the deck build their own approach. Then they don't. They just build it to attack someone, basically. Or build their power base, or this kind of build their strength in this table to do something. If they are a political deck, they build the political strength, and then they aim to evade combat, and then they aim to control the environment with these political actions. That's what they want to do. And this kind of when they have some kind of Masterface cards, these Masterface cards, they will very surely try to emphasis in this. And if you can deny it from them, for example, this kind of political deck that use some kind of approach, they can very well have very crucial for them that they can play some kind of villain, or they can play some card like this like this Tomb of Ramses, or there are this 1 card that lets you move 4 pool to the uncontrolled region, and then it costs 5 pool. That you sacrifice 1 pool to gain some larger, faster. There are this kind of Masterface cards, and then once they cannot use them, it can become bad for them. And then there are this kind of cards like this Legendary Vampire, or some other this kind of, or whatever they want to play. It's always a nice thing that you can, even this Gangrel Revel, you have some Gangrel deck that use Gangrel Revel in Masterface action. You deny it with Voss, and then they cannot have Gangrel Revel. If you think about how strong effect this Gangrel Revel is, it's super strong. It gives you +1 strength to all Gangrels, and then you have many of them. It's suddenly they become semi-dangerous. And there are also these decks that use something like Week of Nightmares, these Ravna decks. This Week of Nightmare decks can be, there was 1 deck that was very well built, and I really liked that deck. It emphasis on this kind of political Ravnos, that you can a lot of pool for having lots of small Ravnos, and then they did more 1 pool Ravnos with this kind of actions, and then they had very low pool Ravnos to get in the game, and then they use this kind of something like Kolos or something that they get more political power from this only to be Ravna. You have something like 10 Ravnas on the table, you shouldn't have 10 more votes and this kind of thing, and then they make these political actions that you get poll for each Ravnas, and then you can have suddenly 10 poll more, and this kind of that they control it with these political actions, and then in the end they play this Week of Nightmares, then you suddenly have +1 bleed and +1 strength, and then they just bleed you 10 times with 2 bleed, and then if you end up combating some of them, they are +1 strength also, that they strike more hard. And then this kind of approach, and that was a tournament winning deck, but there are clear weaknesses in it, that if someone manages to play this 4th cycle, it will wreck that deck instantly. That's basically Ousted deck. And then there are another thing that they really don't want, and that is if someone was out this Week of Nightmare. If someone was this Kolos or was this Week of Nightmare, these very prominent, these Masterface action cards that they emphasis on, and then they cannot play it again. Their plan is ruined completely by only playing one wash. And if there is some player in the game that use this kind of wash cards, even few of them, it can kind of maybe take them as unavoided because no veteran players seem to use it. It's a card that is not used, this card. And then when some novice player that kind of, if they don't know what is good, having to use it, they can suddenly not like it that someone use this, because in their meta, in their head, in their mind, when they construct their decks, they will not guess. They have no idea that someone will take wash, because they automatically assume that no one take. It can even be this kind of gentleman's promise to every veteran player, that everyone kind of knows that no one will use Sudden Reversal wash. They only use it to protect from fear of Meket or something like that. And then they just immediately know, I can build my Masterface and emphasis on it, and I can entirely depend on my Masterface, and everyone else do the same. And that's how we play this game, and this is the meta. And if you don't play it like this, you are not a gentleman person, and that's rude. And then when some person is not part of that mindset that every other person is, and then goes with this kind of, for example, even this Blutsach deck that emphasis even on Sudden Reversal, and have something like 15 of them in deck. It's just constantly Sudden Reversal, boss, Sudden Reversal, boss, and then Show of Force, and then the opposing people, they start to think that this is annoying, and this is like something I don't think hadn't taken into account. I really wanted to use my Masterpass, and now my plan is very rude, and how did it go like this? And then it can possibly even surprise these veteran players. It can be if some veteran players see this video, think that no, you don't know anything, you don't know, it's not good approach, and these kind of things, but they might be right. But if everyone have this same mindset, then there are no this kind of surprises for them. But for some reason, the tournament winning decks, they are never this kind of decks that emphasis on these cards. But I don't know, I see them as this kind of middle ground powerful, that you always have usefulness of them. You can never end up discarding them. You always can use them. They flow through your deck. If you don't go overboard with them, you just have the right amount of them. It can give you options to do something, and you are the person who plan it, and the opposing person is whose plan is ruined for it, and you can build your deck around it, because there is not many master cards that this Blutsach deck need. For example, if you go for Blutsach Anti-Tribute, there are lots of these kind of potency celerity monsters, and they have even this ridiculous vampire called Jackal. It's an 8 pool vampire who have always can one add another strike, and you can play blue on it. Jackal hits 4 times with blue, and it hits 3 times with Pursuit for free. It's a super strong combat vampire, and once you play Unnatural Strength to Jackal, you have Spirit Corpse on, and then you play this Show of Force to Jackal. That Jackal goes to bleed with something like 3 bleed, and then if they want to block it, it's 6 strength Jackal who hits 3 or 4 times in combat, and then plays Taste of Vita. And maneuvers to have this light intensified blockers, for example, can have also, and then maneuvers to close range, and then you don't even need this supernatural strength. You just can add 2 of them, for example, to the deck if you want to play. You don't even need it. You can see that they are too slow, that you don't play it. You want to just play the Spirit the Corpse to gain +1 to all, and you don't need many of Spirit the Corpse because it's cumulative effect that more minions you have, the better, and then you unlock for it. That you only want to have something like 3 of them, for example. That you few times in the game, in the mid-late game, you don't use it in early game. You might even end up discarding a Spirit the Corpse in the early game, or just use it because why not? Even one vampire gets +1 strength. Okay, I get utility from this, but it's not that card that in this kind of deck that you need. Even 2 of them is good amount to just have the option if you need it. But you can even not use a Spirit the Corpse at all. You don't need Supernatural Strength or a Spirit the Corpse. You can even do it so that you only use this Soul of Force, and this 3 strengths is enough for you because 3 strength lets you pummel them. But happen to be if you have to have the Supernatural Strength in Jackal, and then you play this Soul of Force to that kind of Jackal. That's 5 strength, and this 5 strength always 2 times, no matter what you play, and with celerity cards 3 or 4 times. That's so devastating that there are almost no other vampires that can stand up with that kind of onslaught. And once you play that Immortal Grapple, if you can play it, if they are not immune to this grapple cards, then, and if you can maneuver to close range. But there are too many actions that slow you down. If you need to equip the goggles, if you need to put the Supernatural Strength, if you need to always put something to that Jackal, you cannot use it. It becomes too slow, and this is probably what these veteran players know very well. And for that reason, they're banned this card, this Thorn Signpost. You cannot use it. It sets your strength to 3 in combat, and it doesn't slow you down. You can just always use it in actions. But the Supernatural Strength, it slows you down. But if you have to pick one card to be used for this Jackal, it would be this Supernatural Strength, because it makes it so completely broken, this card, that you use only one action to pick this Supernatural Strength. You don't even need these goggles. This can be the reason why they don't use them. You can only use this Pursuit, and I suppose you can use Pursuit again and again and again, that you can even use 2 or 3 Pursuit to maneuver to close range, and then you just add something like 12 Pursuit in the deck, or something like that, that you draw it a lot, this Pursuit card, that you emphasize on Immortal Grapple, Soul of Force, and Pursuit, and that's your strategy basically. And then you have these few blues if there are some strong opponents, because only this, that if you happen to manage to play Immortal Grapple, they cannot enter combat if you manage to maneuver to the close range, and then they cannot use strike cards, they can only use hand strike, and then you happen to have 3 strength for that Soul of Force, and then you happen to have this Pursuit to strike 2 times. Even you would only strike 3 plus 3 damage is 6 damage. In this kind of environment, the opponent might strike you 1 damage, because they cannot use their weapon, they cannot use their strike cards, they can only use hand strike, and in many times it means that it's 1 damage, and they cannot have multiple strikes. And this kind of thing, that they can have some kind of different kind of options or approaches, but even this is very strong, this kind. And if it happens to be this Jackal, this vampire, then it's 3 damage, it's 9 damage, and this 9 damage is usually very enough to put that opposing vampire into the torpor, and then it's very strong even without any actions, that you can only use this Pursuit. And it's a matter of taste, that what kind of, do you want to go faster on their skin or go towards their face, or do you want to build your strength, this kind of action. And when you have this kind of vampire like Jackal, you don't want to use it. You want to have many of them in the group, for example 4 or 5 even, and then you want to play this kind of boost your Jackal, and then when the opponent can somehow, for example with Ravnos, happen to make your Jackal not be able to unlock, then you suddenly are crippled for that, if you go too strongly on some one asset. And for that reason, this middle road in this game is very good, that you plan your actions very carefully, that what kind of actions you aim to use, and you don't make your deck too slow, you go towards their face very fast, and then you have this kind of different kind of things that will benefit you and hinder the opposing side. And then you also have to have some kind of mechanism that will fill your pool. If you cannot fill your pool, you will very fast run out of pool, and that will become a problem. You cannot anymore do anything in that game because you have to use this same resource to everything. So it's very strategic game, and even this prey predator mechanism makes it very strategic. That you have this turn order there, and then you can only when you go to predator you can have more pull back. That's also a mechanism that when you go bleed with so force with this kind of brute force deck, you can have this 6 pull to be used, and that will be what you are after. And from that you gain more pull, but you can have few of this power base in there, of course, the master phase action, because you can use your master phase. You are not limited in this kind of approaches that I envision. You can do it any way you like. But only this, it happens usually many of these bloodlines, they have these 1 or 2 these very strong vampires, and they usually are this in other end of this. You can only use these 1, 2, 3, 6 kind of a category. You can only use 2 these continuous categories, for example 2 or 3, and then if there in one of those categories happen to be some very strong vampire, you usually take it, and then you usually build around it, and then take many of that and hope to use this very powerful, because it's so much more powerful, this Chaco, in this Brutsa anti-tribute than any other vampire in that. It's so good, that vampire, that this one extra strike always that don't go to additional strikes. It's like it's broken ability basically, especially in this kind of approach that you use show of force for that. And if you manage to have this supernatural strength to that kind of vampire, it becomes something that they really much want to avoid. And if they cannot avoid it with end combat, it becomes a menace. It's because something that they want to get rid of. And then it's only one of your assets. You have more assets also. You have probably something like at least 3 minions in this Brutsa deck. And then these 3 minions just go there show of force. You probably end up having 3 or 4 of them, and some of them might be taken out or something. You cannot know how the game goes there, because the other persons, they have their own tricks and they have their own approach, and you are your own predator, and it might not be the winning thing, but it would be straightforward and fun to just try to shut their master play down, target one player, target your predator, then just go to town there and just go to show of force or wreak havoc and bleed them out. And if they cannot do anything about it, if they cannot redirect it, or if they cannot block it, if they cannot end the combat, or somehow, if they are some kind of even crazier combat deck, and I have very hard time to imagine what kind of combat deck would be even better than this. This Brutsa is basically the celerity potency is like super strong, but there are different kind of approaches there. That, for example, there are these Shaman Haze, for example, you can with Fortitude you can prevent all the damage that they do. They suddenly do 0 damage to you, then they cannot use the Taste of Vita anymore, and then you maneuver to close range, you want to be in close range, and then they have this one vampire in the Shaman that do 2 environmental damage in close range always, and then they have this one card that they can use 2 environmental damage also, but I suppose that's also a strike card. If it is, you cannot play it, because this Immortal Grapple neglects it, but still you are giving them environmental damage and you are preventing their damage. They do 0 damage, and they take, in every combat round, they take 2 or 4 damage, depending on what kind of approach you can manage. If you manage to cause them 4 environmental damage each round, that becomes a problem. And this kind of approach, this kind of vampire like Chaco, they want to avoid that kind of situation. And if it's very rare, the Fortitude is very rare, and especially in these tournament winning decks, what I have been studying about or researching this, they almost never have this Fortitude cards. This Fortitude, I don't remember what is this card is. It's probably Skin of Steel even, or something like that. And there are also Protean, there is Skin of Marble. But the Protean card costs one to use. And then it say that in all rounds in entire combat, they can only give 1 damage in each round. That's a maximum. That's Skin of Marble, and then you want to continue the combat with that kind of Protean approach. You want to press to continue combat, because they can only do 1 damage each round, and it affects every round in the combat, this one card, the Skin of Marble. But this Fortitude is only the 1 round, that in 1 round of combat you will prevent all damage with this. But I am unsure, do it prevent environmental? It probably won't prevent environmental, but you are doing the environmental, if you are somebody, and this kind of approach, that there are different kind of this kind of approach, and then there are also this Giovanni that is not seen as a combat powerful usually, that they usually are seen this kind of tricky summoners that summon these minions, but they also have this blight, this necromancy. And this blight, I think, say that the opposite get -1 strength, that they can strike only once. That you can only strike once and get -1 strength. What it means for Jackal, if the Jackal have 3 strength, it suddenly strike once with 2. And if it has 5 strength with supernatural strength, you suddenly strike with 1/4 strength. And that's a big hit, that 1/4 strength, but they have potential also, this Giovanni's, that they can also hit hard back, but both can hit only once. I'm unsure can they dodge. If they can dodge and make the opposite side hit only once, it can mean that they can basically evade everything. But if you use Immortal Grapple or something like that, then. But there are also these vampires in Giovanni that have +1 strength already, that if they are 2 strengths already, and then they also have potence, they can also use this supernatural strength. It can very much be that some Giovanni vampire have 4 strength in hand strike, and they also want to use this Immortal Grapple, and they also use this blight. And then it becomes this kind of both pummel them with one strong strike, and it becomes this kind of even situation basically. That there are different kind of this kind of options that you can do in this kind of environment, but there are not many that can overpower them. But this kind of approaches can make it very hard for them to take these kind of targets out, and especially this summary approach, that if there are many of them, if there's something like 10 Skin of Steel in the deck, that they always prevent all damage. It's become a problem for this kind of deck very fast, because you don't have ways to see, you don't do aggravate damage, you don't do this kind of and I suppose the Skin of Steel also prevents aggravated damage. I'm not entirely sure, but if it does, it's a super strong card, and it's the kind of this very high-end cards in this Fortitude discipline, and something that people should probably use more, and there are reasons why they don't, but because it's also a very rare discipline, this Fortitude. But the summit is also is what I like, this kind of that you prevent all the damage that the opposite side do. You maneuver to close range also, and then you create environmental damage for them, and this environmental damage will become there are also this animalist approach, that you have something like, was it Carrion Crows and Murder Crows, or different kind of things, that you can even have 4 environmental damage each round with this kind of animalist road. But there's this in animalist, there is this one card I really like, this Seper's Innocence. It's one of these cards that I always would add one of them to deck. That it's fun card, because the effect is strong when when you can target it. If there are any other deck that use animalism in the game, you always benefit from it probably, because you add one Separate Innocence in your deck. If there are no animalism in the game, you just sacrifice it. You discard it and draw another card. It's not that much of a big deal, but if there happen to be any animalist card in the table, Separate Innocence means that you suddenly control of them. You can just distribute them how you want. And if there are any animalist deck, they at least use Raven Spy. It's many decks have something like 3 Raven Spy, and that's those animalist cards in the table. And some decks even have Murder Crows or is it Carrion Crow or something like that. And some decks can have Stray Dog or this kind of thing. And even this Alpha Dog or this that don't let them end combat is animals, I think, I suppose. And or at least it's an animal, but the Separate Innocence, I think it's limited to cards that use animalism. And there are those kind of cards that use animalism, and animals deck usually at least have this Raven Spy. And meaning that you play Separate Innocence and suddenly all of these Raven Spies are on your minions. And with only this one action, and that's a fun effect. It's not that these veteran players, they don't use it, of course, because it's very rarely, obviously it's not a good option probably, but it's fun. And you can play this game so that you build your deck, so that what kind of how do you want to play it, and what kind of cards you want to add to your deck. And even one of these kind of fun cards can add some this kind of entertainment value in your deck. There are even these Malkavian decks are completely ridiculous. They're very random, and you can make this kind of kind of choke approach in the game and to make it fun and different kind of. And I there are one of these Toreador deck that use this kind of a kindred social games that can also seems very strong, but I don't. There are very many kind of reasons why it can not be that good in competitive environment, but it's the idea of it that you just spam all your master actions to kindred social games makes it very hard for the opposing players to do anything. If you only use very high pool vampires yourself, you can just, if you all your vampires are 10 or 11 pool, you use only few of them, and then you can put 10 to 10 or under vampires these kindred social games, and then they cannot unlock, and then they have to move it only to lower and lower and lower pool vampires, and then when you every turn when you play one kindred social games, it becomes very annoying very fast that there is always this kindred social games going on, and they never target your own Toreadors because you are very high there in the generation this pool, and they only target this what you play. If you have 10 vampire in the game, it means that you can play it on the 10 because the next minion that you put it is 9. Then this kindred social games that can be very this kind of that you stuck other decks that you hinder their growth, and then you somehow try to emphasize on it. But it becomes annoying for everyone. Then everyone in the game, there is also this psychological aspect in this game that you don't want to stand out. You don't want everyone to get annoyed. You don't want everyone to want to host you. Because it very much can be happen if you only spam these kindred social games and people don't want you to do it. They will just say that to your predator that do you want that I help you somehow to get rid of your prey. Something like that even. That they want to just host you in the game. If you have to carefully think that what kind of opponents or players in there you annoy with it. Even this boss and sudden reversal mechanism, if you only use it to your own prey, it don't that much matter to those other players. They don't target you for it. But if you start to target them with it, they start to see that this is annoying, and then they start to kind of see you as an annoyance to their own plans. And this kind of thing that if you kind of step too many toes in this game, that you can make these people to kind of gang up on you if you have this kind of approach. But if you only have this kind of middle approach that you don't seem that you only use the cards that don't seem to impose. For example, it's very different to play something like the Rack or the Power Base Montreal than to play something like let's say this any other like this. It's very different, for example, to play this card that gives you more transfers, or this card that lets you this card that lets you put your group card to the uncontrolled region with this master phase card. There are very like low imposing cards. They don't impose people. They just okay, you did it, and that's your advantage, and okay, that's it. And it doesn't kind of draw this attention. But once you start to play all kind of crazy cards that people want to contest and are very powerful, they want to steal them, or when you start to play these kind of cards that attack everyone, or attack, you are the person who is the source of annoyance for everyone, that this kindred social game is very much this kind of card, because you target some player with it, and then the mechanism that card means that they have to target new one, and then there are this kind of cards that just circumvates in the game and annoys everyone, and you are the source for it, and everyone starts to think that we want to host you. Suddenly everyone starts to, do you think the same? Yes, and this deck is annoying, let's host this one. And then it can very much mean that you are the first person hosted in this game where you annoy everyone. There are also this kind of thing in this, which also makes it strategic, that you don't want to seem too powerful or too imposing, but you still want to be powerful enough. You don't want to contest, you don't want to be countered, you don't want to be targeted, and you don't want to seem too imposing. You want to go for this kind of in the middle road, this very good approach, and somehow kind of always gain some kind of minor advantages and have built the structure very good in the deck. For example, there is this kind of was very veteran Magic the Gathering player once that just asked me that can I arrange a deck for myself from your discarded cards? That there were this kind of that in my decks that I have built, I used these better cards, but then there were these cards that were, for example, was the same effect but cost 1 mana more. That is the same card, but it's only worse card. There are this kind of cards in Magic, and that's just saying that why would you want to do it? There are better cards. He just said that, yeah, I just want to build a deck. Can I? Yeah, I said, go ahead. And then he won all of my decks with that deck. Even that deck was built from my discard cards, but the composition of the deck was so good that he always draw something useful, and he have always had something that he can emphasize on and build upon. And there was always and he said that the important part is it was old Magic. It was old. There was no this new modern era. It was something like that. This old. It was before Mirrodin. It was something like Urza's era or some invasion era or something like that. That person say that you have to have enough mana and then you have to have always something that you use your mana. As in my decks, it happened to be that there are many turns that I cannot play anything. But in that person, he used these cycling cards that if he cannot use them, he just cycle them and draw a new card. And to have enough mana, then he used these kind of creatures that you can pump with mana. These kind of shades that you have +1/+1/+1 when you can use that mana. So he had this kind of cards in a table that he can never have something that he cannot use the mana. And they have lots of these kind of effects that he can use. And if there is nothing in the table that he wants to use it, he just cycle it and draw a new card. And then with this kind of very carefully created mechanism that he did very fast because he was very knowledgeable about this game, he understood what he need and what kind of approach he can kind of build the deck upon to make the deck flow and have right composition of everything, right amount of creatures. This was of course this kind of tabletop, this kind of kitchen table game that would that person take this deck to the tournament environment. It of course would have been lost very bad because there are way more better decks to that emphasize similar kind of approach or even some kind of very completely ridiculous combos that isn't there. And this kind of mechanism, but the idea is the same. In this Vampire the Eternal Struggle, you have to think like that you always have to want to have this usefulness. You don't want to be the person who plays something that is stolen from you, that if you are the person who played the rack and then your opponents and even your predator end up using it and not you. You don't want that to happen. You want to rather be the person who don't play the rack and who steal it and end up using the rack. And you have to think about this in this game, that you want to have this kind of go for this, that you always have this usefulness and you always have this, that your deck kind of this composition is very well thought out and is very like this kind of I think it's this kind of game. And I never played this. Very funny to do this kind of video because I never played this game. But now I put this video out. I have probably talked enough about this game, and I really much like this game, but I never played it. I don't own these cards, and there was this internet program that some kind of Vassal or something named that you might have played it, but this I never managed to play it. And now when I see myself, I get somehow very annoyed for it, so I end this video.